Ollie, what do you think about them remaking Bloodsport? What do you guys think, man? A lot of people had messaged me on Facebook as well as Instagram, which if you're not following me on Instagram, follow me on Instagram, Real Viking Samurai. A lot of you guys messaged me about the potential remake of Bloodsport because that's been making the news lately. A24, the studio, is talking about remaking it. I knew about this a while ago, actually, late last year. I met with the guy that owns the rights to Bloodsport, Alberto Lenzi. I actually met up with him in Miami. This was completely unrelated to Bloodsport, but it was other business things that I was discussing with him. And he kind of told me the whole story because he just got back from LA and he had meetings and he owns the rights. He met with A24 and they optioned it. So they have the option to remake Bloodsport. I forget how long the option is. I think it's a couple of years and they could always renew that option. So it doesn't mean it's definitely going to happen. It means they're interested and they did pay money for the option to make it. So I'm going to share my honest thoughts about what I think about them remaking the classic film Bloodsport. I've covered so much Bloodsport on this channel. I've interviewed Frank Dukes. Obviously, that's who the movie is based off of. And then Sheldon Lettich, the writer. I did deep dives. I broke down who all the fighters are in Bloodsport. I have a whole playlist on this channel dedicated to Bloodsport because, like many of you, that was one of my favorite movies growing up, and that inspired me and motivated me to train in martial arts, which I know it did for a lot of you guys as well. And it was ahead of its time. It was a great story. They were pitting all these different styles against each other. This was before the UFC and mixed martial arts and all that became a big thing. Now, obviously, everybody knows the best thing is just to mix the different martial arts. It's not like karate is necessarily better than judo and jiu-jitsu is better than boxing. You got to really mix everything together: wrestling, Muay Thai, karate, boxing, etc. And a lot of it has to do more with the practitioner than the actual art. So if you're talking about like fighting and stuff, and that's all been well documented and proven in the UFC, for example. But the movie, when it came out, it was about style against style, and it was very interesting to watch because like I mentioned, it was ahead of its time. That's one reason why it was so popular. But another big reason, it's not just the idea, it's not just a story, it's not just a script, it was the execution. We had a new star, Van Damme, very charismatic, beautiful karate, great physique.
He had it all. He had the whole package. And those guys, they come around every so often.
So he pulled that off. Like, had there been another guy as the lead in Bloodsport, which they were talking about, Michael Dudikoff or Chuck Norris, I do not think it would have been nearly as successful as opposed to having this newcomer at the time, Van Damme, take the lead role. So the execution, the score, just the setting, the 80s, very iconic, very memorable. A lot of the reason why I even started this channel, I even talked about making the 80s and 90s great again, because I grew up watching these and I knew a lot of people were very passionate about these films. But see, that kind of ties into the remake because a lot of people had reached out to me, oh, that's sacrilegious. How dare they touch a classic? It does not bug me at all. I'll tell you why. Because it's not really for us. It's for like a younger generation, man. It's for guys who are like 20 years old who don't even know who Van Damme is, who's never heard of him, who've never seen Bloodsport. They could care less. This movie is for those guys. Now, some of the guys, who grew up in the 80s and 90s like myself would be interested to check it out. Already, we're going in biased, though, let's be honest. We're going to be like, oh, it's not better. There's no way. Like, it could be the most perfectly executed film for A24, but because we didn't grow up watching it, because it hasn't become part of us, it will never be as good. And that doesn't matter. It's not supposed to be. It's not for us. It's for a younger audience. Now, a similar thing happened to that Prey movie where it takes place in the Predator universe and a much younger audience watched it. But see, here's the cool thing. Because they liked it, they wanted to go back and kind of check out the original movie, Predator. So, if anything, this Bloodsport remake will actually bring awareness to the original film, and people who are like 20, 30 years old, for example, will go back and watch it, which I think is actually a good thing. So I understand the argument that they shouldn't remake certain films. Like, I don't think they should ever remake Rocky. I don't think they should ever remake Rambo. Bloodsport, the same thing, but it doesn't bug me when you look at it from the perspective of this movie's not really for us, guys. Like, once we're gone in the future, these movies die with us, man. Because the people who grew up watching movies in the 80s and 90s, growing up watching the Bloodsport and the Rockies and the Rambos and everything, these are very important to us because we grew up watching them. Is there anybody who grew up in the 80s and 90s that are talking about movies made in the 1950s or 60s? Not really. If it is, it's less than like, 5% of people, because we just don't care. That was like our parents' generation. Like, they would care, but once they're gone, those movies are gone and the memories of that. And then for us, like, they don't even exist, man. So that 20-year-old kid, for example, Bloodsport doesn't exist. Van Damme doesn't exist. Those movies die with us, and we got to be okay with that. We just have to realize that in the grand scheme of things, from like a universal perspective, our planet alone is just like a little speck in the universe, and we're the little speck on this planet. And our lives, though important to us and our generation, is in the grand scheme of things, it's all meaningless, man. unless you find something, much bigger, obviously. But just in general, even going to the Martial Arts History Museum, Mike Masuda runs that. He tells me the little kids that go there and get tours and whatnot, they don't even know who Bruce Lee is, man. So if somebody from a younger generation doesn't know who Bruce Lee is, I guarantee they don't know who Van Damme is, man. It is what it is, but it shouldn't bug you. They're important to us in our world where we grew up, but we should not expect them to have any sort of like impact on the younger generation who didn't grow up watching them, when they were fresh, when they were in their primes. But as far as Bloodsport goes, let's talk about some of the remake history. Previous attempts to remake Bloodsport had been made by Australian directors Philip Noyce and James McTeague, but their efforts came to naught, as did an effort by co-writer Sheldon Lettich to make Bloodsport a new beginning, which that actually involves Daniel Bernhardt. I made this video about it, interviewing Sheldon Lettich, linked in the description below. You could find out all about that. Speaking about Bloodsport, Daniel Bernhardt was in Bloodsport 2, which wasn't bad. Actually did get a theatrical release back in the day. Bloodsport 3, which is watchable, and then Bloodsport 4, which is one of the worst movies on the planet. That's just my honest opinion. But anybody who sees it tends to agree. It's really bad, man. So that kind of put a little funk just on the Bloodsport name and franchise in general, because there were 4 Bloodsports, but really only one stands out. But I do believe enough time has gone by where it's a cool title at the end of the day. And that's what even got Sheldon Lettich very interested. There's so many stories, man. Frank says one thing, Sheldon says another thing. They were driving in a truck. Frank was telling Sheldon this story, and he mentioned the title Bloodsport, and Sheldon was like, "Oh, wow, that sounds amazing," And then they went to work on that, and that's kind of how it came to be. At least that's one story. There's multiple stories, man. Now, rumors also surfaced in 2019 that John Wick directors David Leitch and Chad Stahelski were also considering a remake, which, based on the films that they've done, that would probably actually be very nice. And I believe Chad Stahelski was actually one of the fighters in Bloodsport 2. And yeah, he had some really good fights in there. And I know Chad Stahelski and David Leitch were also talking about remaking Enter the Dragon, which is another film that people would say should never be remade.
All of Bruce Lee's movies are sort of close to my heart, so if we get the opportunity to take it on in a respectful way, then it'd be really exciting.
But if done properly in the right hands, I think it could work. Those guys are obviously both martial arts enthusiasts. I think they've more than proven themselves in a lot of the action genre films that they've made over the last 10 years. Oh, and then just with my other conversations I've had with Alberto Lenzi. So, and this article doesn't even cover this. I know so much about Bloodsport and everything when they were trying to remake stuff, just in general from conversations I've had that I didn't put out on the channel. But, since A24 is talking about it, like another thing they were going to do, Alberto Lenzi is working very closely with a guy from Universal Pictures, a big-time producer. He did Conan, did a ton of films, a lot of great films. A guy named Ed Pressman, a producer who had passed away, I think, over a year ago now. So that obviously threw a wrench in the plans, but that they were actually going to have pretty decent budget, like over $10 million. They were going to tie it into the UFC. It's going to be a whole interesting thing. So that was another idea that never quite came to fruition, unfortunately. Will A24 end up doing anything with it? I mean, there's a good chance. They are paying money to option it, right? Right now, nothing's really attached. They got no director. I do believe they said Van Damme will not be a part of it.
Let them do their Hollywood Bloodsport. My first Bloodsport was a real Bloodsport. It was not CGI, was no cable, was not trampoline, was real hit.
Which, Van Damme's like 65 years old now, so there's an idea how it could work, but I could see why they would just start with a completely clean slate. It's honestly best to just get like an unknown guy, just like an unknown guy that's charismatic, that they feel could pull it off, that nobody has, they don't associate this guy necessarily with anything else, right? Just kind of like how Van Damme was back in the day when they were shooting Bloodsport in '86, even though it didn't come out till 1988. So that would be the direction to go. They don't really have any story out there as far as what they're going to do. It doesn't make sense to make the kind of film now where if it's this underground tournament and there's different styles against styles, just because everything we know now and just because of the popularity of the UFC and mixed martial arts, that storyline made a lot of sense in the 80s. It does not make sense now in 2025. So I think the main thing they love is the title because it's a great title. And maybe that could help ignite the martial arts genre in the United States again. I mean, let's face it, the martial arts genre is a shadow of its former self from the 80s and 90s. That's when it peaked, and then MMA and the UFC got so popular and people just watch the real guys do it, and they didn't necessarily have to have the movies or anything else like that. Overall, I'm not opposed to the idea. I think it's fine because, again, just circling back, we have to understand this movie's not really for us. Like, the movie back then was for us. We were young. We grew up watching it. We were inspired. We trained. We loved it. It's become a part of us in a lot of ways. I think that's what pop culture does. I think music and movies become a part of you because, you know, they were there when you were young, you were growing, you were adolescent, and it was meaningful for us, right? But for a 20-year-old kid, they just don't give a shit, man. But they might with the remake. Maybe that'll ignite something in them. Just like this Rambo, Rocky, Bloodsport ignited something within us back in the day.